Theresa Cachuela, 33 years old, lay lifeless in the parking lot of Pearlridge Center in Aiea, Hawaii. Her body sprawled near the gray lines of the asphalt, her 8-year-old daughter standing frozen nearby, witnessing the unthinkable. Jason Cachuela, her estranged husband, had fired the shots that ended her life, right in front of her child. Just days earlier, a restraining order had been granted to Theresa, a desperate legal attempt to protect herself and her children from the very man now holding their lives hostage. She had been out shopping, trying to live a normal day, carrying her youngest, unaware that the danger had been stalking her movements. Her daughter's eyes, wide with terror, saw her father's hands on the gun. The bullet struck. Theresa fell. The life she had built, mother, entrepreneur, influencer, stilled in an instant. Jason fled the scene, leaving behind the shattered remnants of a family, and hours later was found dead, an apparent suicide. This was no spur-of-the-moment act. Jason Cachuela had watched, waited, and calculated. His obsession, his rage, his passion to control had culminated here in plain daylight, with a child as the witness to the horror. The echoes of that morning are now etched into the minds of everyone who knew her. How could someone so full of life, so devoted to her children and her work, fall victim to the very person she once trusted the most? You're watching Bruised Voice. Hit the like button if you haven't already, because with every like, you're helping give justice to those who can't speak for themselves. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments and hold that thought, because this story is far from over. Theresa Cachuela was 33 years old, a mother of 3, an entrepreneur, and a woman whose life had become a public testament to perseverance and ambition. Known in social media circles as Bunny Bontiti, she built her brand carefully, sharing beauty tutorials, Christian devotionals, and moments with her children. But behind the curated posts, Theresa navigated a life that was anything but safe. Born and raised in Hawaii, she carried the warmth of her community in her heart. House of Glam Hawaii, her beauty salon in Waipahu, was more than a business. It was her labor of love. She co-founded the salon with her best friend, May Nanny Knight, and expanded her creative reach with Luke's Lashes, her personal line of false eyelashes. These ventures were a reflection of Theresa's drive, her commitment to her craft, and her vision for independence. Each product, each post, spoke of a woman who was not only building a brand but protecting a legacy for her children. But her home life was marked by tension, danger, and the quiet terror that many in her community could not see. Jason Cachuela, her estranged husband, a man who had once shared her life, had become a looming threat. Over the years, his behavior had grown controlling, obsessive, and volatile. Friends and family noticed the change, though often they dismissed the small signs, the lingering messages, the unexplained appearances, as misunderstandings or minor disputes. Yet every missed warning, every underestimated red flag, had a weight that no one could foresee. Theresa's loyalty, her hope that Jason might change, kept her trying to mediate, to maintain peace for her children. She believed in accountability, in the possibility of resolution. She had moved out of their shared home in Waipahu, into a subsidized unit in Ava Beach, seeking safety, yet every effort to protect herself met with resistance. Jason's harassment escalated, lurking in her garage, showing up without warning, chasing her in his vehicle. He knew the spaces she considered safe, the routes she took, the moments when her guard was down. Each act was deliberate, testing limits, probing vulnerabilities. He was unrelenting, unpredictable, and persistent, traits often excused in relationships, but in Jason they carried the weight of menace. Theresa sought help. She contacted the Domestic Violence Action Center, applied for a temporary restraining order, and communicated fears of imminent danger. The TRO, granted on December 8, 2023, legally required Jason to surrender firearms and cease contact. Yet the paper could not contain him. The law had lines. Jason saw them as challenges. In the days before the tragedy, Theresa called 911 repeatedly. She reported stalking, intimidation, and threats. Each call, a testament to her awareness of risk, went against a backdrop of a system stretched thin, sometimes reactive but not always preventive. Her daughter, only 8 years old, witnessed her mother's final moments on December 22, 2023, in the Pearlridge Center parking lot. What should have been a routine outing became a scene etched in horror. Jason approached with resolve, armed, and with the culmination of obsession and control guiding his actions. He shot Theresa, and in that moment, the life of a mother, a businesswoman, and an influencer was ended. Theresa's story is a study in contrasts. A woman celebrated for her independence and achievement, yet acutely vulnerable in the personal sphere where trust should have meant safety. Her killer's flaws were not invisible, They were predictable, identifiable in his obsessive attempts to dominate and intimidate. Yet they were underestimated, ignored, or dismissed. In her death lies a stark warning. Sometimes danger wears the guise of intimacy, and vigilance is only as strong as the world around it. Every detail, from her entrepreneurial pursuits to the subtle signs of Jason's controlling behavior, paints a picture not just of loss, but of the structures, human and institutional, that can fail even those most vigilant. Theresa's life and death serve as a haunting reminder that violence can be methodical, that obsession can go unchecked, and that even a mother who has planned, protected, and prepared can be caught off guard by someone she once trusted. The days leading to December 22, 2023, were marked by mounting tension, fear, and a looming sense of danger that few could see but many would feel in retrospect. Theresa Cachuela, 33, a mother of 3, a beauty influencer, and a businesswoman in Hawaii, had been fighting not just for her life, but for the safety of her children. Her life had been a balancing act, growing her brand, nurturing her family, and navigating a relationship that had increasingly turned from strained to threatening. Her estranged husband, Jason Cachuela, 44, was not a man who could bear being denied. He had been monitoring her, tracking her movements, and when he felt powerless, he became dangerous. It all began years before, with subtle signs, almost invisible to the casual observer. Jason's control over Theresa was quiet at first, a claim of concern for the family, a subtle manipulation cloaked in love. But by early December 2023, the control had transformed into menace. On December 6, Theresa contacted authorities to report a chilling encounter. Jason had held a knife to his neck in front of her and their children. It was not a moment of despair for healing or attention. It was a calculated display of threat, designed to terrify, to assert dominance, and to keep her tethered to him emotionally. The trauma was immediate. Theresa, a woman known for her composure and grace, described feeling trapped in her own home, watching a man she had once trusted become a threat to the life she was trying to protect. She was aware that even calling for help could provoke a violent reaction from Jason. Yet she persevered. She wanted to create a safe space for her daughter, for her children, and for herself. 2 days later, on December 8, she reached a breaking point. Jason had hidden under her car in the garage. This was no ordinary intrusion. This was the presence of a predator in a space that should have been safe. Theresa acted. She called 911, reporting the incident with precision, detailing the danger posed not only to herself but to her children. On the same day, she filed for a temporary restraining order. The courts granted it, and Jason was served with the order. 5 firearms, potential instruments of extreme harm, were surrendered. On paper, the law had intervened. Jason's access to weapons was restricted. His capacity to contact Theresa was limited. Yet even with the TRO, he remained a looming presence in her life, watching, calculating, and waiting. The court hearing on December 20 issued a 1-year protection order. This legally barred him from contacting Theresa and from interacting with their children in any unauthorized capacity. To any outsider, this might have seemed sufficient. Justice had acted swiftly, responsibly. But in reality, it created a sense of inevitability. Jason, cornered by the law, reacted not with compliance but with obsession. Each restriction seemed to fuel a darker calculus in his mind, a plan forming over the days. He became a man consumed by rage, jealousy, and what he interpreted as betrayal. This wasn't impulsive. This was methodical, a mind plotting the endgame while maintaining the appearance of normalcy. Theresa, despite the TRO and her best efforts, could not see the storm that had been building, the storm that would manifest in public in front of her daughter, in a place she thought was safe, the Pearlridge Center. December 22, 2023, began like any other day in Theresa's attempt at normalcy. She prepared her daughter for school and a brief breakfast outing, unaware that the routines she maintained for security and comfort would not shield her from the danger lurking nearby. Around 10:15 a.m., Theresa and her 8-year-old daughter arrived at Pearlridge Center, a familiar shopping and dining complex in Honolulu. Jason Cachuela, aware of her movements, had been waiting. The moment he saw them, a culmination of days, weeks, and months of obsession crystallized into action. He approached in a gray vehicle, moving deliberately through the parking lot, observing, calculating, anticipating. Theresa, focused on her daughter's safety, had no inkling that this encounter would end with irreversible tragedy. Jason drew his firearm and fired multiple rounds. One of those bullets found its mark. Theresa fell, struck in the head. Her daughter, standing only feet away, witnessed the act. The innocence of a child collided violently with the reality of calculated murder. The second stretched infinitely. Theresa's life ended in the very public space where families gather, unaware that a predator could strike with such precision. She had survived countless micro-threats over the preceding days, each warning, each call to 911 a plea for recognition of danger. Yet, even the protective measures in place could not intercept the culmination of Jason's plan. Immediately after the shooting, Jason fled the scene in his gray Mazda. Law enforcement responded with urgency, but the trail led to an ominous conclusion. Hours later, Jason was found dead behind a residence in Waipahu, an apparent suicide completing a deadly sequence of his own making. For the witnesses, for the daughter, for the community, the violence could not be erased. Pearlridge Center, a hub of daily life, had transformed into a crime scene, a location forever marked by betrayal, obsession, and loss. Theresa's daughter, left in shock, represents the enduring trauma that accompanies such acts. The public, now aware of the horrific sequence, faces questions about system failures, about the measures taken, or not taken, to prevent the inevitable. Theresa Cachuela's premeditation, obsession, and ability to execute a plan with chilling precision stand in stark contrast to Theresa's attempt at a safe, normal life. Every step in the days leading up to this event now reads as a warning, a prelude to the fatal act. The timeline from December 6th through December 22nd shows not only a series of escalating threats but the psychological environment of fear and control Theresa endured. It reflects the terrifying reality that even with court intervention, documentation, and reporting, a determined and unbalanced mind can produce devastation. Each day, each call to 911, each court order was a shadow preceding the inevitable, until it culminated in the tragic morning that has left an indelible mark on her family, community, and the consciousness of all who learn her story. The Honolulu Police Department responded with urgency to the scene at Pearlridge Center. The quiet hum of shoppers and morning routines had been shattered by the crack of gunfire, echoes that lingered in the parking lot as terrified bystanders sought cover. Officers arrived to find a scene of chaos and shock. Vehicles were parked haphazardly, some doors left ajar, shopping bags scattered across the pavement. Amid the stunned crowd, Theresa Cachuela lay motionless, her life extinguished in broad daylight, witnessed by the daughter she had fought so hard to protect. The first responders worked methodically, but the magnitude of the act, calculated, relentless, and public, left a mark of disbelief on every face. Theresa was pronounced dead at the scene, and the officers quickly turned their focus to the suspect, Theresa Cachuela. A man who had once shared her home and life, now transformed into the instrument of tragedy. Within hours, authorities launched a manhunt. Surveillance footage and witness statements guided the search, mapping Jason's escape through the streets of Waipahu. Approximately 10 miles from Pearlridge, behind a residence in a quiet neighborhood, his body was discovered. The cause of death, suicide. The same man who had terrorized the morning, who had taken the life of a mother in front of her child, had chosen to end his own. The investigation turned a critical eye toward the events leading up to the crime. Jason had been served with a temporary restraining order just days prior, a legal barrier intended to protect Theresa and her children. He had surrendered 5 firearms to authorities, complying with the terms of the court order. Yet questions persisted. How had he obtained the weapon used that morning? How had the series of calls for help, repeated reports of stalking, threats, and attempts to hide in her garage, gone without sufficient intervention? Each unanswered question pressed heavily on investigators, highlighting the tragic gaps in the system designed to prevent such violence. Detectives combed through evidence meticulously, from witness statements to phone records and public surveillance cameras. Every detail mattered: the timing of Jason's approach, the angle of the shots, the response time of first responders, and the account of Theresa's daughter, who had witnessed her mother's final moments. Investigators sought to reconstruct the sequence of events, to piece together a puzzle that had ended with irreversible loss. The psychological profile began to emerge: a man capable of obsessive control, a history of intimidation, and a mind that had meticulously followed a path toward violence despite legal restrictions. Authorities also examined community and social media records. Public posts and interactions shed light on Jason's increasing instability and Theresa's efforts to maintain normalcy for her children and business. Investigators noted the stark contrast between Theresa's diligent attempts to build a safe environment and Jason's escalating aggression. The investigation illuminated not only the crime but the human dynamics behind it, a pattern of control, fear, and warning signs that had, tragically, gone unheeded. Even after Jason's death, the police continued to explore the broader context of the events. the timeline of restraining orders, the prior 911 calls, and the procedural steps taken by law enforcement. Each revelation added to the complexity, raising critical questions about prevention, the adequacy of responses, and the hidden pressures victims like Theresa faced daily. In every corner of the investigation, the shadow of that morning lingered, a reminder of how swiftly life could be stolen, and how the echoes of such violence can haunt a community long after the act is done. Jason Cachuela was never taken into custody. The law never had the opportunity to confront him, never had the chance to ask why. On the morning of December 22, 2023, the violent act he had been planning, the obsession he had cultivated, reached its tragic conclusion. By the time officers located him behind a residence in Waipahu, his life had ended by his own hand. No courtroom drama, no testimony, no sentence. The justice system would only ever hear about his actions through the aftermath, through the grief of those left behind, and through the chilling accounts of a daughter forced to witness the unthinkable. Authorities pieced together the chain of events, reconstructing the moments in which Jason approached Theresa, the precise timing of the shots fired, and the path he took to his final act. The absence of a trial left unanswered questions hanging in the air. How had Jason circumvented the restraining order so quickly? What drove his obsession to a point where he could strike in broad daylight, in a crowded public space, in front of his own child? Investigators were left to examine his history of harassment, the firearms surrendered under court order, and the documented threats he had made to Theresa in the days prior. Every evidence marker, every 911 call, every interview with friends, neighbors, and family painted a portrait of a man consumed by jealousy, control, and desperation. Yet the law could only account for what had occurred, not the intent that led to it, leaving the story incomplete, haunting in its gaps, and raw in its finality. Theresa's death was irrevocable. Jason's death closed the door on legal accountability, forcing the community, the authorities, and his surviving family to grapple with the enormity of the event, piecing together justice in the shadows of sorrow. The tragic death of Theresa Cachuela sent shockwaves through her community, leaving family, friends, and neighbors grappling with disbelief and sorrow. The woman who had built a life around her family, her children, and her passion for beauty and entrepreneurship was gone, taken in a moment that should never have occurred. As the details emerged, the conversation surrounding this case turned from grief to scrutiny, raising hard questions about the systems in place to protect victims of domestic violence. Advocates and community members began asking how a protective order, granted just days prior, failed to prevent Jason Cachuela from approaching Theresa in the Pearlridge Center parking lot. How could someone who had surrendered firearms and was legally prohibited from contacting her still manage to carry out an act so violent in public? These questions linger, heavy and uncomfortable, as society confronts the limits of legal protections meant to save lives. Lucida Anini Hoa, Theresa's mother, has since stepped into the public eye, her grief transformed into advocacy. She speaks out about the urgent need for stronger enforcement of restraining orders, harsher consequences for violations, and improved safety protocols for survivors seeking to escape abusive relationships. Her efforts emphasize that no family should have to experience such preventable loss, and no child should witness a parent taken in the blink of an eye. The case also highlights the complex nature of domestic abuse, showing how control, obsession, and fear can escalate to lethal violence even when victims follow the law and reach out for help. Experts have noted that a combination of proactive law enforcement, comprehensive safety planning, and societal awareness is critical in preventing tragedies like Theresa's. As communities reflect on her death, the conversation extends beyond individual accountability to systemic responsibility. It underscores a harsh reality: protective measures, while necessary, are not infallible. Even when victims take every precaution, their lives may still be at risk if warnings are not treated with the gravity they deserve. Theresa's story is now a cautionary tale, a somber reminder of how domestic violence can turn deadly despite legal intervention, how fear can shadow daily life, and how urgent the need remains for stronger protections. It challenges everyone to think critically about prevention, intervention, and support systems for those trapped in abusive relationships. At the end of it all, Theresa Cachuela's story leaves us with a chilling reflection on how quickly life can be taken when danger hides behind familiarity. A mother, an entrepreneur, a woman dedicated to her children, struck down despite her efforts to protect herself and those she loved. Her loss is a stark reminder that domestic violence can escalate to deadly extremes, and that even the most diligent precautions may not always be enough. The conversations sparked by her death are not just about grief, they are about accountability, about recognizing the signs of escalating threats, and about demanding systems that truly safeguard victims before it is too late. For her family, the pain will linger. For her daughter, the memory is indelible, and for all of us, the warning is clear. Awareness and vigilance are crucial in protecting those who cannot always defend themselves. If you or someone you know is facing abuse, it is imperative to reach out for help. In the U.S., the National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24/7 at 1-800-799-SAFE-7233. Lives can be saved when support and intervention come in time. Share this video to raise awareness and honor Theresa Cachuela's memory. Every like, every comment, every share strengthens the voice of those silenced and sends a message that these tragedies cannot be ignored. If you haven't subscribed to Bruised Voice, each subscription, each like ensures you hear the voice of the victims, the voice of the silence, through this channel. Subscribing keeps you connected to stories that might otherwise be lost, and reminds us all that these voices demand to be heard. Take a moment now, comment where you're watching from, reflect on the story, and let the impact of this tragedy remind you of the fragility of life and the urgency of protection.